Hello, Peter4789 here, and welcome to a short video where I talk about my impressions on the Valkyrie Elysium Demo that dropped on September 14th. Now I guess I should discuss my history with the Valkyrie profile games before I get into the demo, since this is technically part of the series, even if it is a spin-off developed by a different studio. That is to say that I played Valkyrie Profile Lenneth and Valkyrie Profile Samaria, but Samaria is the only Valkyrie profile game that I've actually beat. Granted, I say Samaria is like one of my favorite PS2 games, but suffice to say that I'm not that well versed in the series. But that might be a good thing since Valkyrie Elysium plays quite differently from the old Valkyrie profile games, at least in regards to the combat system, since Valkyrie Elysium features a much more traditional action combat system, whereas Lenneth and Samaria had a mix of a turn-based and real-time combat system that features multiple party members that had a focus on comboing and building that combo up to perform your finishers. Not to mention the visual style is pretty different too. But I guess that's enough history. Let's talk about my actual thoughts on the demo. If I were to sum up my feelings on the demo, I'd probably say that it has potential to be a solid action game with light RPG elements. Now, I wouldn't say that the demo gave me an abundance of confidence in the title, like the Scarlet Nexus demo did for that game, but I did like what I saw in the demo. I think the first thing I really like is the soul chain mechanic. Now, the soul chain mechanic is essentially a grappling hook technique they can do that will allow you to basically propel yourself to your intended target, but I think it feels great to use. Just the rush of speed you get from propelling yourself to an enemy, and how you can just strike at the enemy right away into an aerial combo, as well as how you can use it on all the enemies in the demo, makes it a very satisfying and versatile option to have in combat. It's just a great gap closer in general, and makes combat feel snappy and fast, as it allows you to basically be in the brunt of combat without having you to basically run to your next enemy, due to how you can just hookshot to your next foe after you finish your previous one. The range is also insane too. Another thing I like about the soul chain is just how versatile and general purpose of a mechanic it is, with it both being a tool that you can use in battle to quickly close in on your enemy, as well as a tool used for general exploration, with it allowing you to gain access to optional areas through the use of hooking onto crystal points. And I think general exploration with the crystal chain is done relatively well, with it rewarding you for checking your environments to find these crystal points to get to these optional areas, which is a good use of the 3D environment and movable camera system that the game now has. I say this since most of the exploration and dungeon crawling in Valkyrie Profile Lenneth and Samaria was done onto the 2D plane gameplay wise. So it's good to see that Valkyrie Elysium was able to transition into a 3D plane relatively well, at least in regards to how the soul chain functions in regards to exploration. So as you can see, the demo gets a lot of mileage out of the soul chain mechanic. I think it's a pretty well done mechanic, at least in the context of the demo. Now, the second thing I liked in the demo is just the relative level design. Well, that goes toward the actual first level of the demo that you go through, which is the Basilian territory. Now, I guess I should discuss how area progression works. It seems like Valkyrie Elysium will go toward the Neo way of area progression, in that you basically have a hub area where you select which level you want to go to via a terminal. So it's not like there's a semi-connected world in Valkyrie Elysium, like one you find in an RPG. Heck, you even have to select side quests as its own type of mini-level in the game. But back to what I was saying about liking the level design. I really do like how many side areas there are alongside the main path of progression in the Basilian territory. There is surprisingly more exploration in this level than you expect from just looking at it, with there being a lot of side paths that either led to treasure chests or hollow blossoms, which are these flower petals that convey the thoughts of humans that were living in the area. I also really like how there are alternative paths to progressing through the area through the use of the soul chain mechanic, allowing you to have a shortcut of sorts. I think the demo does a good job of making the area feel multi-layered, even if it is fairly linear. Though that only goes for the Basilian territory. The tutorial area is pretty straightforward. Now for the combat. I say this is the part where the demo is kinda weird, since you don't have a feature that was showcased in the tutorial area going forward into the first level of the game. That is to say, the Inheriards. They're in the tutorial section, but not in the actual first level of the game. But despite that, I will try to give my thoughts on the overlying combat system found in the demo. Now as for my thoughts on it, I will say that I like what I played of the combat. Granted, Valkyrie Elysium plays pretty much like a traditional action game, where you only be controlling as the Valkyrie for all of the demo, with your main offensive tools being your weapon moveset, divine arts, and inheriors, and your defensive options are relegated to dodging and blocking. So yeah, that does sound pretty traditional aside from the divine arts and inheriors, which I will talk about later on. But even if it is traditional or even a typical combat system, I would say that the game does those elements rather well. Like, I think the general moveset that you have with your weapons in the demo does feel pretty good to pull off. And I do like how the two weapons you get in the demo do feel very distinctive from each other, with Alphador being your general purpose weapon that has a good range and a balanced moveset that has a good potential for aerial combos due to how Slash Kick, a relatively fast move to execute, can be followed up right away with Jump Cancel and Rising Slash that will allow you to do an air combo on an enemy, while Valkyrie specializes in dealing multi-hit attacks against a single enemy, with its purpose being around dealing with humanoid enemies. I think the demo does a pretty decent job at making each weapon distinct and fun to play around with, which gets me excited to see the other weapons that we might get in the base game. The defensive mechanics are also okay. Blocking and evading works like expected, but I think the perfect defend or parry mechanic does a good job of feeling like a powerful counterattack, though I do think that the timing for that can be a bit tricky. Perfect dodge I feel is sort of underpowered since there's no really good benefit to it, unless you're dodging an unblockable attack, which is a real letdown for me personally. And then there's the cancels you can do with your defensive mechanics and jumping. I briefly talk about how you can jump cancel Slash Kick, but you can cancel a lot of your moves doing a variety of cancels. Now it's kind of move dependent on which move can be more easily cancelled with which type of cancels. Like, I found a lot of Alphador moves besides Slash Kick are block cancelable, while a lot of moves from Valkyrie can be jump cancelable if you got the timing down. So you do need to experiment a bit to know which cancels to do for a particular move. But I do like that aspect as it adds to the technical side of things and gets you to experiment with your moveset more. And it feels rewarding since you are able to get rid of those recovery frames if you do get the cancel timings right. And then you have the soul chain mechanic, which I talked about before, which amplifies combat a good deal, with it being a great grab closer type of mechanic that allows you to zip to your foe and keep the momentum and pace going. So I would say that the game does have a solid foundation, even if it does feel typical. But I guess I should go talk about the mechanic that is more unique in the demo, that is to say the Divine Arts and Inheriors. Divine Arts is essentially your magic, with you being able to wield a variety of elemental spells to use against your enemy, with each elemental spell costing 1 meter of your magic meter, which is indicated by the diamond icon, with you being able to replenish that meter with your weapon attacks. What makes Divine Arts interesting is not only due to the resource cost, which gets you to play between attacking with your weapon and magic, and getting you to carefully decide on when is the best time to do magic due to how limited your magic meter is, but also how enemies have an elemental weakness mechanic of sorts built into them, with you being able to knock them down if you hit them with the right elemental, effectively locking them down, as well as dealing a lot of damage to them. So all these factors combined make the Divine Art to be both a powerful and meaningful option to have in combat. I also like the variety found in the Divine Arts, since it's not simply just your typical spells you can use. I mean, the fire, ice, and heal spell are typical, but then you got the Grave spell, which is this thrust attack, and Convergence, which is this light spell that whips enemies to you. So seeing this variety does get me pretty intrigued to see what other Divine Art is in the main game and see how those additional Divine Arts can potentially expand the combat in interesting ways. And overall, I do think the game does a pretty good job in making the Divine Arts to feel powerful and meaningful, while also balancing it with the base combat with the various weapons. Then we get the Inheriors, which is like a summoning mechanic, where you can summon the souls of fallen warriors to help you in battle. Now, we've only seen this in the tutorial section, but based on those small snippets, the main contribution that this mechanic will bring is to give your weapon an elemental infusion so that you can interact with the elemental weakness system more, rather than it just being limited to Divine Arts, as well as how it can strengthen your own Divine Arts if you have the same elemental. So it seems like the Inherior system will mostly be a supportive mechanic to enhance your offensive capabilities, which is fine. I will admit that seeing the improved version of your divine art was pretty cool, and I do like how the inheritor system will get you to interact more with the elemental weakness mechanic, but as it is, it doesn't seem to add much combat options to the game as it is. It just amplifies what's already there. It doesn't seem to actually change how you play the game, which is why I'm pretty meh about it. Though I will admit that could potentially change in the main game if the upgraded divine arts do have other properties than increased damage. But so far, it seems fine in combat. I will say though that they did tease how you can use the inheritors to traverse past various obstacles in the level, which just get me pretty excited to see how they will implement them in the exploration section of the game, when we do get inheritors again after the tutorial section. I guess the last thing to talk about is the light RPG elements, aka your skill tree. Basically, there's a skill tree that you can use to upgrade Valkyrie with. Actually, 3 skill trees where you can improve Valkyrie's strength, defense, and supportive abilities. And the way you get those upgrades is by spending gems that you get from either defeating enemies or by finding them in chests in the level. So from what we've seen in the demo, I say I like the skill tree. I think the upgrades do feel pretty noticeable, and I do like how the skill trees consist of both stat upgrades and actual abilities that we can learn, such as with double jumping, dash attack, or learning finishers. Granted, the skill tree seems pretty linear from what we see, but it's a demo, so I won't hold too much against it in that regard. Though it is kind of annoying how you can only hold 500 gems of each different type, but again, it might be a demo only thing. But I would say overall that the skill tree seems like a nice progression system to have. I am also curious with the SP cost thing, which might indicate that we might have to pick and choose which upgrades to activate, which might lead to interesting gameplay decisions in regards to choosing which skill you want to activate, which could mean there might be different type of playstyles that you can choose with the type of skills that you can get. So I am interested to see how the skill tree will look in the main game. Oh yeah, there's also a weapon enhancement system, which is pretty much what it sounds like, where you are able to upgrade your weapons by using the aforementioned gems that you use for leveling up your skill trees. And I said that the weapon upgrading system works okay. I do like how you learn new moves when you upgrade your weapons, alongside your weapon improving its general stats. Well, that's the things I liked in the demo. Is there some stuff that I don't like? Well, there are certainly some things that I find middling, but things I actively dislike. I would say I'm not the biggest fan of the environmental design of the game so far. Like, I think the character design looks cool enough, at least with Valkyrie. It's just that the environments just feel generic and drab. Also think it's kind of annoying how you have to go back to Valhalla in order to do side quests, since it's like its own mini level that you have to select from the terminal. The game also seems kind of too easy, even on hard mode, especially if you're using items. So I do hope that there might be an additional difficulty setting in the base game, or maybe even more incentive to do an itemless run in the levels, besides just getting a better score in the scoring system. So that's all I can say about the demo. There are mechanics in the demo that I haven't talked about, such as the combo gauge or weapon proficiency, but the demo doesn't really do anything with them except say that they exist. So yeah, it's no man's land to think if they're good or not. But overall, I say that Valkyrie Elysium does have the potential to be good. Now, is it what Valkyrie profile fans have been waiting for? Probably not. It's a totally different type of game using the Valkyrie profile IP. But from what's shown in the demo, it does have the potential to be a good game still, as long as they properly expand on what is shown in the demo. Well, that's my thoughts. This is Peter4790 Osiris signing off.